We are talking about the movie Freaks. This one is directed and written by Zach Lipovitsky and Adam B. Stein. And this one stars Emile Hirsch and Bruce Dern. And I guess you want to say this is kind of like a science fiction superhero movie in a way. It's very reminiscent of the X-Men in regards to, if you're familiar with the comics, the X-Men are mutants who have natural abilities that are feared and therefore they are shunned by the kind of the general populace, and obviously the comics and the films have touched upon that as well. And this very much is kind of like has this kind of the same theme here, although you're not entirely sure what you're watching first of all. So what we have this this father and his young daughter appear to be kind of hiding out in this house. And there's, you know, at the beginning of the movie, we can tell that there's some type of, should we call it paranormal things that are going on, but we're not really sure what we're watching. And as the movie progresses, we kind of learn more and more and more. The movie is not a movie that holds your hand, especially. It very much wants you to pick up the clues, and I think it does a good job of doing so. You know, giving you this kind of the threads to pull here. But it never really holds your hand, I would say, and explicitly kind of says what is going on. We find out that there are people with certain abilities, very much like your X-Men, and they are essentially vilified, and you know the regular kind of populace wants nothing to do. They want them destroyed, and it's that kind of the fear and the kind of, you know, it's a little bit of an analogy of kind of bigotry, but done obviously to the kind of like the utmost kind of extreme here. And with fatal consequences for anyone who kind of comes in the path. So we have this paranoid father played by Emile Hirsch trying to kind of keep his daughter safe. And then I'm not going to go into kind of, I don't want to spoil the kind of the roles of other people, but suffice it to say there are a variety of different abilities that you'll kind of see here, and I feel it does a kind of almost like a real world job of maybe kind of showing you kind of what maybe people, if they did exist, how they would be treated. So that's your basic plot premise here. So let's first of all talk about what works. I thought this was a fantastic premise. It's a great movie, and I've got to say a shout out to one of my viewers who actually suggested this movie, Dominant Persona. Thank you for, he's been going on at me for a couple of times now to watch it, and I finally have, based on his recommendation, and I'm very glad that I did. It was a fantastically scripted film with an intriguing story, great hook. And you have capable actors here. I mean, Emile Hirsch, Bruce Dern, these are, experienced actors. You've also got Grace Park here, who is plays like one of the kind of like the FBI agents or something that are investigating the kind of, the abnormal people. And then we have this young girl here who is like, I believe it's her first role, or at least, not too many roles. And she's great. I mean, she's like adorable, but also there's when it calls on her to be powerful, would have this kind of like this presence. So she definitely has it. So I feel here the acting is all very, very good. And the story has a great payoff as well. The story, goes in some unexpected, but unexpected areas, and it kind of when it's all coming said and done, when you kind of look at it as a whole, the story isn't particularly complex, maybe, but certain things are revealed as the kind of the plot progresses that that will hold your interest, and motivations are kind of revealed, and maybe kind of relationships to different people are kind of show the light on, which makes it all that fantastic. What I've got to say as well is there's a great emotional sense to this movie, because you are really feeling the emotions of the kind of the characters here. That's down to the acting and the script and the direction, really. So this was a really kind of like well-performed movie. When we do see the abilities, I've got to say they're very imaginative. I mean, some of them are kind of like versions of superhero powers maybe we've seen before. Some of them maybe not so much. Now, this isn't the first time that we've had, a kind of a superhero-style movie without actually being, necessarily based on a comic book. There's been plenty of, Midnight Special. You've got Chronicle, things like this. That will kind of maybe say, well, what would really happen? you know, and this is kind of one of those films, but it's you can watch it as a science fiction movie without necessarily. It's not really. I wouldn't class it as a superhero film, per se. But you would appreciate it more, I think, if you are a fan of kind of maybe superhero movies, and especially the X-Men films, because I feel, although these people aren't kind of fighting crime and dressing up in costumes and stuff, there's that kind of persecution storyline which is always present with the kind of the X-Men kind of comics and films and things like that. The film is pretty great. Do I have any critiques with it? I feel the film, it does take a little bit of time to get going, to be honest. I feel the first act is a little bit slow and maybe hides its cards a little bit too well, so you don't really know what's going on. When you watch the film as a whole, everything will fit into place perfectly. But I think maybe some people may not really know what's going on within that first act and maybe start to turn off. But I advise you to persevere with it, because you will have that kind of path, you will understand it. But nonetheless, I do feel maybe some people will be a little bit perplexed with their first act, not really know what's kind of going on, to be honest with you. Do I have any other critiques? I would have maybe liked to have seen a little bit more kind of on the kind of the police side of it. Grace Park plays this kind of agent who seems to be a tad more sympathetic than maybe the general populace, and I would have liked to have seen that explored a little bit more, because it's kind of almost forgotten about when we see towards the end of the movie. And I've got to say, the only other thing I would say is, in the current political climate where, you know, we have very kind of left views, very kind of right views, I don't know if I would buy that everyone would be very much against it, because you've got to think if the whole kind of you look at things like transgender rights or, you know, racism, things like this, you obviously have very much supporters of those kind of minorities and things like that are very vocal and kind of very defensive and support these kind of like these groups. And I think maybe the movie needed to have a degree where we see at least some people who are a little bit in support of it to a point. I don't think it kind of brushes that everyone is really against it. And I think in today's political climate, especially where people are so divided, it would have been nice to have maybe seen that represented in maybe some of the populace. Maybe the most people kind of against them, I get that, but I feel it needed to show at least a little bit of social division within the kind of the human populace, so to speak, which we never really get. But it is only obviously a movie running at the time, and this is all going to kind of like bump up the running time a little bit. So maybe I get why it wasn't included. But as it is, it's a very, very well made film, superbly acted, with some great special effects that aren't overdone, with some thrilling kind of like smaller set pieces, but nonetheless set pieces nonetheless. And I would definitely recommend it, even if you're not really a superhero fan. It's still worth watching as a kind of a standalone sci-fi movie. But if you are an X-Men fan, then you will get a little bit more from it, I feel, because you'll be a little bit kind of familiar with this kind of style of story before. So I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. I really, really enjoyed it. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.